This is where you get off or come out of the access from the metro at Spagna. If you follow Rick Steed's instructions absolutely explicitly. And then you encounter this huge remains of the Roman wall. And now we are in the gardens of the Borghese. So if you see where the M is, that's where we are now. We're going to follow the road that goes to the northeast via Museo Borghese to the Borghese Gallery. And I have an 11 o'clock appointment. I have to be there at 10:30 to pick up the ticket. This gives you an idea of how extensive the Borghese property was, at least at this one spot. We're down at that lower right, where the big oval is, working our way towards the Galleria. I'm always appalled and impressed in a negative way by how much of a country's resources or a province's resources the powerful were able to siphon away from the poor, who, other than the time of Augustus at the turn of the millennium, BC AD, had any real benefit from down that road. And I'm just going to pan around here 360 fairly quick so you can get a scope of continuing the scope of the dimension of this property. And we're just down in one little corner of it. Okay, that's 75%. You can imagine what all this looked like when it was brand new and they had tremendous resources for maintaining it. That pond there, I think, is not intentional. The lower one's a pigeon, but the one beyond it is something else. It looks like a crow, but it's different. It's got some white markings on it. Not as spectacular as you might expect, at least on the outside. A pretty welcoming fountain. There are statues and benches. Statues at the corners, but I'm betting that they may have had statues at maybe each of those break points in the wall. At least the rain has stopped. Since I have 45 minutes until I can get in on my reservation, I will cruise the gardens in the back. Last night the rain was constant and thunderous with lightning, just a stupendous night. I wonder if you were a guest here, if you were allowed to pick an orange and snack while you were cruising or trysting. It's neat the way their orange trees are used as hedges. How much of what we're going to see now is original Borghese versus what's been brought in, I don't know. Certainly these bulbous things look original. Of course, so do those statues. Again, when you see these gardens and this building, I'm reminded of Louis XIV's Versailles. Notice how effortlessly this sculpted body seems to hold what must be a fairly heavy lion pelt. This is a copy in cement that shows you how far down we've come in replication. You have to wonder what these bulbous statues, for lack of a better term, meant. And presumably these smaller pedestals held statues also. Whether they were larger or not, I don't know. Hercules, perhaps? I'm guessing that all of these statues are cement replicas of originals, either Roman or Greek, Hopefully the copies are inside and we'll get to see them. Although I'm not sure what I'll gain from it. I'm going to pan from behind those statues around just so you can get a feel of the tranquil park-like setting. It reminds me of the park that we visited at the castle, or whatever they call them, in Russia. It was so vast in its walkways, providing so much room for trysting, which apparently was the primary pastime of certainly the nobility at Versailles, if not elsewhere. Those two towers are curious to me. They look so industrial, so after the fact, so curious. I wonder what they were used for. I can so imagine in nicer weather having a little chunk of gorgonzola cheese, some bread, and for me, frizzante water, for others, some wine. Just sit and relax and enjoy this environment. That lure I feel is very reminiscent of the strong sense of pleasure and contentment I get finding such quiet places in the wilderness, or in the woods at least, where I can sit unencumbered by humanity other than myself. This is a pretty little ventano. I think that was what I called those little fountains there of water over the left. And then this, what probably was a very pretty fountain at one time. Maybe it had foliage growing on it, like I saw yesterday at the Sistine Chapel visit in their museum. You wonder what this beautiful edifice was for, and who built it. I'm going to pan these buildings just outside the perimeter of the Borghese. I don't know whether they were old buildings or maybe 18th century. They have that look about them. Perhaps homes initially of the wealthy, maybe government buildings, I don't know. It's a very pretty building. You wonder if they had murals where those bricks are. Would make sense. Or frescoes. Probably a monument, since it looks like that center post in there might have held something like a statue or whatever. To orientate myself over to the right through the trees, you can just barely make it out through the trees on the very right. But anyway, there, down this long driveway, seems to be an entrance. Perhaps it was in the early days. And some kind of monument statue. And I'll turn around now and face the opposite way. And here are two fairly large pedestals that probably held some sculptuary. And it leads further on past this intersection to something else. It's interesting to see these palm trees, which you normally think of as tropical in nature in this climate. I'm standing now at the entryway to that area that I'm showing a moment ago. It's large statuary, and those pedestals to the left held, I'm sure, more. And then there was this wall, has two openings in it, has several niches. Those oval ones are interesting, that would have held statues. What the purpose of all this was, I don't know. It may have just been an entrance to that part of the garden, which may have been unique in itself. More statuary pedestals. And these are the two entry statues I was standing between a few moments ago. Cars can come in here, as evidenced by the one coming, and also the wheelies someone did in this spot for some reason. This looks old and original, but who knows? Probably not original. these balls, for whatever purpose they were, maybe they're similar, maybe they're iconic, like the 6 pills of the Medici in Florence. And the doorways themselves have little niches. These, what are now gutterways on these roads, are very much in style still in parts of Rome, and it seemed to me very dangerous to drive on. It seems slippery as can be. Another pedestal similar to those we saw a few moments ago at that, whatever that curious structure was. This is at the corner of this park portion, and over the wall there appears to be, let's take a look. Ah, yes. Gardens, fountains. These must have been very formal flowered gardens, I would guess. But notice their property ranges up where those pine trees are and beyond. Now we're on the road back to the Borgia Villa. Another pretty building. I don't know what its purpose was. Maybe we'll see here in a moment. More of that same kind of statuary, somewhat alluding to what the Egyptians did, but I don't know. This is that little building. Pretty from this side, whatever it was for. Maybe it was a guest house or something. More gardens. Maybe it was bathrooms. More formal gardens. Maybe this is a nursery for the rest of the grounds. Notice those pretty structures there. I bet that's an aviary, or at least was. I'm going to walk directly back up there because I'll be coming back this way to go to the Etruscan Museum. But I did note to myself that I have not seen any pretty birds at all. In other words, sparrows, blackbirds, or that crow-like thing, bird. But that's all I've seen. Seconds after saying that, I saw what I think is a house wren that had a little bit of red on it, and then a beautiful parrot with a long tail. Go figure. These are very pretty structures. Even though it's winter and raining, you can get an idea just from all these trees and the gentle slopes and the pretty pines in the background of what a pretty park this must be just to amble around in. Or ride a bicycle. There's apparently a bike rental nearby. And those pretty buildings, I believe, are for the entry to the Zoological Museum. The area I just came down from in the park. Behind me is the museum area, and where we're going is to the National Etruscan Museum, I think, to the right. There, the museum, the National Modern Art Gallery. Rather monumental complex, isn't it? Maybe someday I'll have a spontaneous combustion generated interest in modern art, but I can't see it yet. There's a nifty tram. It'd be fun to get a ride on. I'm now just at another entry into the vast grounds of the Borghese estate. I don't think it's where I'm trying to go, but it was too interesting not to come up here and take a look at it. Even in the rain. I think I need to be off to the right, but I'm going to pursue this. Pretty little fountain outside of what looks like a government building of some sort. A library, maybe in the park. This is the downhill side of that little fountain. It's got its own grotto.